Let's go into Matthew 13, verse 11. So we all know the parable of the seed and the sower, right? If we were going to read verses 1 through 10, we would see where Jesus was telling the parable, and he's talking about the seed that fell by the wayside, and those seed were devoured by fowls, right? Okay, what does that word devoured mean? I sat back there after I studied and I said, let me go back and read this just a little bit more. There's more to this, and there's always more to it than we've recognized and we've realized. I said, what does this word devoured mean? What happened to that seed? Well, it was consumed, Brother Kevin. It was consumed. Then there was seed that fell on stony places, and it says that there was not much earth. So the sun scorched and withered that seed. Now, what does scorched and withered mean? The heat was so intense, and withered means there was a lack of water. So there's no nourishment. There was no river of life, so that seed died. And then the seed fell among thorns. And the thorns did what? Choked them out. What happens when somebody chokes? There's no breath. There's no air in and out. So these seeds have been consumed by the fowls of the air. And they have had the water and the breath of life taken away from them. But then we see the seed that fell into good ground, because the Bible says fell into, not on, but into. Actually, let's read that. We'll start there. Verse 8, Matthew 13:8. But other, meaning other seed, fell into good ground. So that seed did what? It penetrated the ground and went into the earth. It went into good ground and did what? Brought forth fruit. It was fruitful. Some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples came and said unto him, why do you speak to them in parables? There were a number of times as I walked with Pastor Allen that he would speak to me, and I could feel the word penetrating. Now, it probably happened early on when we walked together, but I was growing, as we all were growing as we walked with him as a father. We were all growing, and I got to a point where there were times when he would say something, he would look at me and he would say it. Not just correction and instruction, that's what you're thinking over there. But he would say something, and I could feel the power of the words because they would penetrate. Now, how could those words penetrate me? Because I was open to him. If I had blocked myself off, if I had closed myself off, if I had a hard heart towards him, any of those things that we close ourselves off, those words never would have penetrated like they did. But I was ground that was hopefully good ground that he was speaking into, and I could feel those words penetrate. Right now I can't remember any examples, but they did. I could still see his face speaking to me one day. We're standing up facing each other. He's several feet away from him, and I felt what he said go into me. And it stayed there, and it's still there. When I needed this, brought back to my remembrance, whatever it was. He answered and said unto them, now he's speaking to his disciples, correct? Because it is given unto you. Why are you speaking to all these people in parables? And now he's speaking to them. You're asking me, disciples, why I'm speaking to them in parables. And now he directs his response to them. Because it is given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing they hear not. Neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, or Esaias, as King James says, which saith, by hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, or callous, or hard, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and should understand with their heart and should be converted, and I should heal them. Now, it does not say right here that God closed their ears or their eyes. It says they closed their eyes. They closed their eyes. So that tells me, see, I know from my own life experiences, there are times that it has required a sovereign move of God to deliver me of something. There was no conscious decision that I made. Now, there was a desire to be delivered of that. But then there were times that I had a conscious decision to make and a choice to make. But it says right here, their eyes they have closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, hear with their hearts, and should do what? Should understand. So what happens when the eyes are open, Brother Greg, and the ears are open, and then there's understanding? What does the rest of that scripture say? It says, and I will heal them. So when eyes are open, ears are open, and there's understanding of what is going on in life, when there's a revealing of truth in one's life or in a circumstance, then healing can come. That's why I told that man, I said, there will be time, it will take time for healing, and it will take humility. I couldn't tell him it would take humility on his part, but it will take humility on his part, and it will take time. But I also told him, as long as you continue in this cycle, there's not going to be any change. And the last time we talked about this, I said, there are two people that can fix this, you and her. And it's going to require both of you changing, not just one. It will require both of you changing. I said, otherwise you're just in an endless cycle. And I told him, I said, everything you're telling me is tension and stress and strife, anger, blah, blah, blah. Jesus had what? He had compassion on the people and he healed them. The things that we go through in life, where we are, God will birth compassion inside of us if we have eyes to see and ears to hear, and we have understanding of the situation, because it goes so deep. This life goes so deep. There's so much more to it, Brother Tommy. There's so much. It actually, it's interesting who God is and what He is, because He's so simple, but He's so deep. And when you dig down and dig down and dig down to the simplicity of life, there's God. When you find Him, there's life. And it's so simple. When you're free of that obstacle, it's so simple because it's behind you and it doesn't face you anymore. When you're free of that mud pit that you run through, and you get on the other side, it's so simple because it's behind you and you're not dealing with it anymore. You might have to go back and get your shoe, Brother Tommy, or help someone else get their shoe that's stuck down a couple of feet down. You might have to have somebody behind you that's going, you can do it. Physically pushing you, going, you can do it, you can do it. By the way, since y'all competed in the Spartan race, now when I go to the gym, it's like there's a radar. I don't even look for them. I've seen two people in there with these Spartan shirts on. And I don't usually pay attention to what people are wearing. And it's not like they're bright colors. They're dark gray or black. They're like, ooh, there's a candidate for next year. Okay then, there's another one. We're going to keep building this team. See them go out there and do great things. But blessed are your eyes, He said to His disciples, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. Blessed are your eyes and your ears, for you see and you hear that blessing of life. That you have the ability to see, you have the ability to hear, and thus if you have that, then in the equation you will have the ability to understand. And then when you have the ability to understand, then you can be healed. Realization and recognition Realization means the making or being made real of something imagined or planned. Think about that. These guys planned for months to compete in the Spartan race, and then there was a realization of that because it happened. It manifested, it took place. Realization means the result of such a process. And it's interesting that they would use this example. I got it off dictionary.com. The example they used is the new church was the realization of a 10-year dream. Our new building will be the realization of a dream much longer than 10 years. And Brother Joshua's already sent me pictures of some examples. And we're going to do this thing, and we're going to do it together. Realization means the act of realizing, or the state of being realized. An instance or result of realizing. How many times have you been going through life and you've just been living? You've been living your life, and then you had the realization, you realized something about life. That there was an aspect of life that you did not know existed. Now, we could probably take out a list and write down the things that we have come to realize about this life. We could start with the realization that it's special, it's a gift, it's something to be coveted, to be cherished. But it's also so much more than what we were told and what we were taught. There's a depth to it, there's an accessibility to it that we can live and enhance and be enhanced by. The greatest realization is the self-realization of who we are. What's inside of us? I heard another man say, and y'all heard Pastor say it 1,000 times, he said, the graveyard is the richest place on earth. Well, I heard another man say that. He said, basically, the graveyard is full of treasures that people never utilized, that they never used. He was basically saying that they have gifts and talents inside of them that are never realized, or never even revealed. See, the realization to me in this message is the revealing of self, and the revealing of life, the revealing of light and breakthroughs, of physical breakthroughs and mental and emotional breakthroughs. Realize is to grasp or understand clearly. I love that. To make real, give reality to a hope, a fear, or a plan. To bring vividly to the mind. That's some deep stuff. To bring vividly to the mind. Well, if it says to bring vividly to the mind, Mr. John, then it already existed. It just comes to the forefront of our consciousness, of our mind. I've watched about 1.5 documentaries on the Allman Brothers. I won't surprise y'all. And the first one I watched was pretty good. And then I saw there was another one. And the second one that I'm in the middle of watching is about Dwayne Allman, about the formation of the band. And I didn't know why I was drawn to watch that, but I was stirred up inside to watch it. I really consciously wasn't that interested in watching it. But I just was stirred up to watch it. And I've gotten several things out of that. One thing is he had a vision. He was a visionary. And when he put that band together, the rest of them couldn't see what they called it an ensemble, but they couldn't see what that collective group could be. I would love to talk to him because I believe that he saw the gifts and talents of each one of them, and I believe that he saw, as the leader and as the visionary, he saw how they would meld together and work together. And in part of the story, so if any of y'all care about that band, it's my favorite band of all times. That's why I'm watching the documentary. But he is a young white boy, and he's playing at Muscle Shoals down in Alabama. Now that's not Nashville, LA, or New York, but he's playing as a session player. And Muscle Shoals was known to have a lot of R&B and black artists come through there, and he's playing down there. And he also was, he lived by the beat of a different drum. The other session players that were interviewed said that he could not understand their lifestyle because they were married, they had mortgages, They had bills. Now he's 24 years old, 23, 22, 20, whatever, 21 at that time probably actually. And he just couldn't understand. He thought those things were hindrances that tied people down. So he would stand there, they'd go home, and he'd stand there and play, right by himself all night long. They said he always had a guitar in his hand. They said they'd sit down and talk to him, and he'd have a guitar and he'd have a book, and he'd sit there talking to them, just playing, just melodies coming out of him. And he'd sit there and pick up a book and read for a while, and then he'd start playing. He always had that guitar in his hand. And see doors open up for him to play with Aretha Franklin and Eric Clapton and others, this little unknown white boy down in Alabama. But these artists were coming down there to cut songs. Anybody ever listen to Hey Jude by the Beatles? Okay, did you listen to Wilson Pickett's version? You probably will now. Go back and listen to it. It's on the charts by the Beatles. And he's down there, and Wilson Pickett's down there, and he's playing session guitar. So session players are pretty much no-name people. They're just there to play rhythm and play whatever, and the big stars come in, and they use them as their band to cut. Well, as this guy that was being interviewed put it, you're looking at 1960 whatever in the South, and Wilson Pickett decided not to go into town for lunch. Well, he said blacks weren't treated the best, but he said long hairs were treated even worse. So some of you younger folks won't understand this, and I had kind of forgotten it until I was actually talking to Josh last week. I said, man, I don't know if you know this, I said, but man, back in the 60s, long hairs were not welcomed by rednecks in the South. There was a fight going on because they were hippies. They were seen as, and they were hippies, and rednecks didn't like it. So he said that long hairs were treated even worse than blacks. So they decided to stay back. I'm telling this story for a reason. Here's this 20 or 21-year-old kid nobody's ever heard of, and here's Wilson Pickett. And he said, hey man, have you ever thought about playing or recording Hey Jude? And it was a tough sell. He had to convince Wilson Pickett, you need to record this song. And see, that song was on the charts for the Beatles. That was unheard of, that an artist would cover another artist's song that's out there on the Billboard Top 20 or whatever it was at that time. Just unheard of. See, Dwayne Allman saw something that other people didn't. This got me so excited when I was watching this. This just inspired me to watch this, because here's what happened. You're going to probably go listen to this. I did last night over and over and over. Well, today at the gym, over and over and over. And they said, they record this song, and when you listen to it, at the end of it, it's Wilson Pickett basically yelling. It's what it sounds like. He said, and Dwayne Allman is playing his guitar solo underneath him. He said that was revolutionary. People did not do that at that time. So nobody's heard of this guy, Dwayne Allman. But there's some record company executive sitting in LA or whatever that hears this song, and he has an ear for music. And he makes a phone call and he says, who is playing guitar on that? And the other guy said, I don't know, I have a clue who it is. He said, call Muscle Shoals and find out who that is. And they said, okay, and they called him back and said, some kid named Dwayne Allman. He said, I've got to talk to him. They signed him to a contract. And this is the part that really ministered to me, Brother David. Because the guy that was telling the story is a music industry guy. He said, look at this. He said, the guy couldn't write music, he couldn't sing, and he didn't have a band. Now let that sink in with some of y'all that's really followed music. He did not have a band at this point. He could not sing and could not write music. They gave him a music contract because they wanted him. Because see, his gifts and his talents made room for him. Some guy sitting a couple thousand miles away listening to a wings, bread, hamburger. burgers, French fries. I've seen it all last night. It's coming back to my remembrance. It was a beautiful experience. For you may clean the outside of the cup and the platter, but within, those things that people are drinking and that they're eating are full of what? Extortion, lies, and deceptions. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. What is he saying there? The cleansing comes from the inside, not from the outside. It comes from the inside. It's an inside job. Y'all remember Pastor Joseph preaching that message years ago about an inside job?
Yes.
I think I was sitting on the front row. I think he almost ran into me one time. He was so excited. But it's an inside job. Woo! I can't do it like him. That's all we've been talking about for years. All he was doing was saying the same thing Pastor was saying, that it's an inside job. It is an inside job. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you, man, he is slamming these guys. For ye are likened unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones, and of all uncleanness. These guys, we won't go to Revelation, but these guys are a part of the harlot system that's going to be destroyed in the book of Revelation. It's going to be destroyed when Jerusalem is destroyed in 70 AD. That is why he is hammering them. He is slamming them. Because we could go into Revelation 17 right now and 18 and we could see where he talked about the kings and the priests and the princes of the earth and how they're in bed with her, the harlot, the Jezebel spirit, and they're deceiving people. I wish I had a DVD and could play certain dreams and visitations and things that I've seen and experiences that I've had of how evil that spirit is. Really, any darkness is evil because it takes life from us. And it will take and take and take and take until we put a stop to it. Till we put a stop to it. He's telling them right here, you're a bunch of scribes and Pharisees, you're hypocrites. You're full of dead men's bones because you're blind guides. Even so, you outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Recognition means an act of recognizing or the state of being recognized. It's the identification of something as having been previously seen, heard, or known. It's the perception of something as existing or true, such as realization. The acknowledgement of something as valid or as entitled to consideration. That's what recognition is. To recognize is to perceive as existing or true, or to realize. It's the same thing that he's saying right here. You're full of hypocrisy and iniquity. You don't realize who you are. You don't recognize what time it is. You don't recognize what you're walking in. You have no realization that what you are doing is full of evil and iniquity and deceitfulness, and you're beguiling the people. But there's a Savior that came on the scene, and he went to the cross, and he's going to come back in 70 AD, and he's going to get rid of Herod's temple so that you can't use that temple anymore to prostitute the name of God. He's got fire in his eyes because he's got a passion for this life. And he is riding a white horse. And he does have a sickle in his hand. And he came in 70 AD. And he took that temple down. He said, don't go out and you try to separate the wheat and the tares. I'll separate the wheat and the tares. See, there's a thin line in this life. When to sit back, okay, God, you got to do this. Some things that I've found take a sovereign move of God. Then there are other times that we have to get off our butts and we have to put some action into it. What verse are we on? 29. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. I'm seeing a pattern here. Because ye build the tombs of the prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them of the blood of the prophets. They're liars. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. How can you escape the damnation of hell? Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them ye shall scourge in your synagogues, and persecute them from city to city, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachas, whom ye slew between the temple and the altar. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. That generation that he was talking to. And we could go into Revelation and see where John sees it, and he writes about it. Because what Jesus prophesied, what he is telling them, brother, he was giving them a seed and telling them truth and telling them this is going to happen to you and your generation because you have not opened yourself up and you have not been good ground and received the truth. And because you have not received that, you're going to face devastation and desolation because you did not receive the truth. The greatest visionary to ever walk the earth was Jesus Christ. He always saw further than anyone, and peripherally. He knew who was around him. He knew his circumstances. He realized and recognized his circumstances. Who was around him, where they were, what they were doing. He would speak to his disciples knowing that there were others sitting right there, but there was a multitude back there that could hear also. And he was speaking on different levels. He would say one sentence and it meant different things. It had multiple levels of power and authority. And would go out and it would do what it was supposed to do. He was the very embodiment of truth, of light and life. It's what he wants us to be. To be healers, deliverers, the light, all these things, every cliche that I could bring up that we've heard in the church, that you could hear on a Sunday morning or we could pull up on YouTube from the preachers. They're saying these things, but how deep is it going? Is there true change inside? There's a cry. That man I was on the phone with last night, I called him because he was crying out. And I told him, I said, brother, I said, there are many, many houses tonight that are just like yours. Many. And he asked me, why? Why is it? What he was basically saying is, why do others recognize the goodness in me and those that I live with don't? To sum up what he was saying to me. And the answer is not that simple. There's some complications with that. But he's not the only one. There are many across the land. That's why what we have in this word that we've been given is so valuable. It is invaluable. It is precious. It is to be cherished and nurtured and grown in. It's got to penetrate us and change us, bring healing and light to us inside of us. Our cup and our platter have to be cleaned, washed out with Dove. That's pretty good. With Dove, with the Holy Ghost, to wash and clean us out. So that what comes out of us, what comes out of our pipe, is simple and clear. That there's clarity and truth. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. Now he's getting serious. He's going beyond just this set of clowns he's been talking to. It's the whole city. Because they're going to be closed in and walled up, and how many died? 1.1 million. Isn't that the number? They're going to starve. There's going to be blood in the streets. Mr. Kelly came back there. I finished studying, and I had some alone time. I said, listen to this song, and it was a Greg Allman song I listened to years ago called God Rest His Soul, and I had to listen to the first 45 seconds. I said, do you have any idea what that's about? And she said, no. I said, he wrote that song because he was watching the news when it was announced that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, assassinated. I said, and he wept at the loss of this man. And he picked up his guitar or picked up his notepad and he wrote the song. That's where the song came from his own despair and love and compassion and sense of loss that the earth experienced when that man was assassinated. But a song came out of him that day. Very short, very simple actually. And it was a song of despair. It's called God Rest His Soul, because he wanted that man to have peace while recognizing the loss of the man and the loss and probably what would happen after the loss with the turmoil that took place. O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together? Even as a hen, I can see Pastor right now, he'd do it like this. As a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Desolate. For one simple reason. There's either truth or there's lack of truth. Where there's truth, there's fruitfulness. Where there's a lack of truth, there's desolation. For I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. A visionary put together a band like nothing anyone had ever seen. And he died early. What else did he have inside of him? What else did he have inside of him? Man, what else is inside of us that's not realized yet? What gifts and talents that are inside of us that are yet to be realized? What's going on with us that we don't realize, that we need to realize and change? Man, my cry is for that. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., he said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And he basically prophesied his death. He said, I'm not going to get there with you. But he had been to that mountaintop and he saw the promised land. I've seen the promised land, and I endeavor and persevere to dwell in that promise. But not just me, everyone that will receive that promise, to dwell in that promise of love and life and peace and rest. There's a series of songs that played when I was working out this afternoon, and there was one, it's called What's Going On. It's not a Marvin Gaye's version. Then the song, this girl's singing, she's talking about her cry. She's crying out for release from the pressure that she's in life. And she said, I cry out for revolution. Her cry was coming from inside of her. The revolution to take place inside of her. A revolution to change the status quo. Usually we think of a revolution as to topple a government. Well, every one of us has had or has a government governing us that has to be toppled. There has to be a revolution. When we topple that, and the revolution takes hold and grows like a wildfire inside of us, burning up everything that's hindering us, every stronghold and obstacle, so that we can move forward and take the land. Take the land. Brother Tommy had a vision for competing in the Spartan race. And he had a couple of people surround him to be a part of his vision. And he would tell you that he wouldn't have made it without them. But you sparked that. You sparked it. And you came back and the three of y'all were excited. And I told you, I said, your excitement's going to get other people on board. And right away we went from 3 to now we've got 7. And I don't know how many people we'll have next year. And you already have learned that some people say they're going to do things and they don't do it. It doesn't matter. When it all boils down to it, It's what do I say? What do you say? And do you back it up?